part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Welcome to Dig on America, where we speak truth to power. Every week, we give you the dig on how American history, policies, and media created the social and political issues we face today. DOA is independent media supported by listeners, but they'll tell you we're just fake news, deep state propaganda, funded by George Soros, the Clinton Foundation, BLM Marxists, and...
I got one.
Lizard skin baby eaters.
Max Headroom.
Oh, he's definitely up to something.
Yeah.
He's
Why are you bringing me in?
You're watching Dig on America.
Why did we like that show so much when I was a child? I was like, this is the best thing ever. I don't understand.
It's children of the 80s. Mikey, who's your sponsor?
You guys probably aren't familiar with him, but the Master Chief has actually signed up as a patron. At patreon.com/Dig on America.
Oh, Master Chief from Halo?
Yeah. The Master Chief is actually signed up, and we want to thank him for his continued patronship and fighting the Sangheili forces that are just outside our galaxy, waiting to obliterate us all.
Hey,
it's
welcome.
Good he's there.
He broke McKee off a little something though.
Yo, McKee had to get it. Yo, McKee had to know. She know now.
Yeah, that's why she's questioning her whole loyalty now.
She's all messed up. I don't know what to do, Chief.
Got it all twisted up in the game.
I don't know what to do now, Chief.
I thought I was going to have the T-shirt game wrapped up today with my Chicago Sting throwback shirt, but I might be in second place with the Goonies shirt. And he's got Pumpkin Jack or whatever the fuck his name is from Nightmare Before Christmas.
It's me.
I like the Goonies shirt, even though I'm not the biggest fan of that movie. I am in the minority, and I know people hate me for it. But
still haven't seen it all the way through.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Girls can't keep their hands off you long enough to see the whole movie, dude.
It's a curse.
Yeah, I know, man.
I don't know.
Welcome into Dig on America, everybody. This is Jason Dutch. I'm here with the Goonie Man himself, Big Haas, and Mr. Michelangelo Feminier, an Inquisitor, as we are here on
High Inquisitor of the Royal Council.
He's about to start searching the galaxy for Obi-Wan Kenobi any day now.
Oh, that's 2 days from now.
Yes, it is. And with us today, Attorney Anna may be joining us. She's had a little bit of a personal issue. We won't dox her.
We put her business on the street.
But
no, we will not.
She's getting that sorted out, and hopefully she'll join us for the second hour. But we do have a special guest here, at least for the first hour. We're going to try to persuade him to stay longer. He is an author, and he doesn't care for Mitch McConnell. So we already know we're going to get along. Welcome to the show, Ira Shapiro.
Yay!
You don't like Peter Turtle?
Brother of Ben Shapiro, correct?
No relation. It's great to be with you all.
No relation.
There is no relationship between myself and Ira Shapiro.
My God,
he is not the guy for this show. He is just another liberal kook. But
about 30 years ago, I was always being mistaken for OJ's lawyer. That was
Robert Shapiro. That's right.
People got real excited when they saw me. They thought I was OJ's lawyer.
Oh, wow.
But I wasn't.
He said no.
Didn't have his money.
It depended on how cute she was, right?
But you could be now.
Mm-hmm.
You might have a second chance if he gets caught with something else. You might have another chance. So,
I think OJ's already back in jail, or did he just get out of being back in jail?
He's out of jail. He's been out of jail for a few years now.
He's always.
Oh yeah, because he had that creepy ass video like I'm on Twitter.
Yeah, and Twitter won't verify him.
And then he's making comments about Deshaun Watson and stuff. I'm like, dude, stop.
Yeah,
just
lay
low, dude.
He's got a lot of followers though.
He got to act like Nate Dogg and lay low, dude.
Just chill.
So we are going to address what happened yesterday in Texas, but we're not going to talk about that right this moment because we've had this interview booked up for a few weeks now. with Ira. Now, is IRA short for the Irish Republican Army or the Internal Revenue Service? Which do you prefer that we call you?
Administration.
Just Ira.
Nope.
Just Ira.
Just Ira.
He has no
Like,
time
why-
for
why are
my
you doing all
dad
this?
jokes. Yeah. My dad
Time
jokes.
for your flim flam.
Well, remember, I'm on the East Coast, so it's pretty late already.
Let's go.
Yeah, so
AKA,
can it?
Let's
So
go.
can
Let's
it,
move
Can it,
along.
can it, can it, Dutch?
Moving along.
Yeah.
Yeah. Move along.
I love being hammered and told what to do. So
These aren't
let's
the
do
droids
that.
these aren't the droids you're looking for.
Let's do that. Let's give Ira the center stage here, and we will start out by christening him in the Dig on America tradition. We're going to play a little game with you. It is called 4 Down Territory. We will ask you 4 questions. You will give us 4 answers. 10, 15-second answers are perfectly fine, or whatever you want to say. So let me call an audible.
Oh God.
Jesus.
There's the
Oh,
audible.
God.
All right.
Grown.
Let's see. I'm going to ask you the first questions because I thought of this earlier. Ira, when you're killing time, is there a particular game on your cell phone that you play?
Ooh, you're a time waster.
No, I play Wordle. It only takes a few minutes, though.
Okay. So Wordle, you're posting your Wordle scores on Facebook, I take it?
No, I don't post them.
No.
I think that's ridiculous.
He's
but
not
I don't-
trying to embarrass everybody.
I play, but I don't post them.
Everybody would just stop playing if they started seeing the scores, and then then there's no one else to play the game with, and it's just not fun anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That's to
All
play
right.
in secret.
Haas, Mikey, what do you got?
I got one. If I give you 2 tickets to any sporting event, which team are you going to go see?
I'd love to see the Warriors and the Celtics next week.
Oh, that's going to be.
Oh, that's
be-
a bold prediction too. I like
That would be a
that.
great one.
Miami's washed, dude. Jimmy Butler ain't got nothing left. They're
Yeah.
out of there.
Well, he's hurt. Hero's hurt.
That's a wrap. You see, Marcus Smart got the ooh, I feel so much better shot. He rolled the hell out of that ankle, and 10 minutes later he was dippity. I was like, oh,
It's that
can't
cortisone
feel it.
shot,
Can't feel it, can you?
right?
Pull the old.
All right.
Chuck.
So is it my turn?
Yep.
All right, Ira. As a child, favorite summertime childhood memory.
Going deep.
Baseball, playing baseball. It's what I did in the summer. I grew up at the height of the Yankee-Dodger Giant rivalry, and I just loved baseball all the time.
What position did you play?
Oh, I moved around, but since I was a little, my reflexes weren't great. They put me in the outfield eventually.
Okay,
That's actually more
okay.
dangerous sometimes. I almost would. I almost especially when I played softball, I'd almost rather be in the infield, so I don't have to think about it so much. But
Can I ask the 4th question?
yeah, you can. Though I want to ask you this though.
Go ahead.
Now, as a kid, did you, when you guys didn't have a ball? I know my generation, a broom handle and a rock worked just fine too, and screw the neighbor's windows, right?
Well, we played with a broom handle. I don't recall playing with a rock, though.
Maybe a balled up socks
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah. But I balls
I think okay.
over the neighbors' houses.
Well, it's because you had that. You were swinging for the fences.
That sweet swing.
Yeah, right.
Yes. All right, Big House, you get the last question.
Over
That's 4 already, guys.
No, his asking.
That was a sub
follow-up
question. That one didn't count.
I just saw this, and I what is the bust of over your left shoulder on the
What do
bookshelf?
we got?
The bust.
It's Marcus Garvey.
Oh,
Whoa, really?
Marcus Garvey.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Wow.
Why? Tell
Yeah.
us. Tell us.
He was one of the great liberators, and my daughter was in the Peace Corps in Central America, and I like Marcus Garvey.
Okay. My grandmother taught at Marcus Garvey Elementary School for 40-something years.
Were you part investor on the boat?
The Black Star Line?
Yeah, the Black Star. The Black
Oh,
Star
that's
Line.
that was the name of the boat,
Yeah.
for real.
Yeah, exactly. It was. Yeah, we did a feature on Marcus Garvey. When recently, right?
It was in the wintertime.
Yeah, a few months ago, but I think during Black History Month, I
think it was in February.
Yeah, we juxtaposed Marcus Garvey with Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois. So yeah, Dubois. He's a French Dubois. All right, so Dubois. Ira, you are here for a reason, sir. A few days ago, you released a little something that you put together, and I will give the folks a quick little snippet of this. The book that he has written is called "The Betrayal." How Mitch McConnell and these Senate Republicans have abandoned America. The quick snippet from Google is on Ira is in two previously highly regarded books on the U.S. Senate. Ira Shapiro chronicled the institution from its apogee in the 1970s through its decline in the decade since. Now Shapiro turns his gaze to how the Senate responded to the challenges posed by the Trump administration and its prospects under President Biden. In the link on the YouTube video here, you guys can see a link to the book itself on Amazon if you guys would like to pick that up. But right now, we're going to find out a little bit about why this book, Ira.
Thanks for asking, Jason, and thanks for having me come on the show.
Sure, pleasure.
I probably have thought about the Senate more than any reasonable person should. I got hooked on it early, right out of college. I was an intern one summer, and I got very interested in it. I thought it was a good outlet. I was interested in politics and government. I'm old enough that I grew up in the last constitutional crisis, Vietnam, violence in the streets, the assassination of a couple of my heroes, Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. And over time, it morphed into Watergate. And I was in college and law school then. And the Senate was an institution at that time you could admire. The Senate was trying to end a lot of people trying to end the Vietnam War, trying to advance civil rights, ultimately holding Nixon accountable for Watergate. And I was attracted to that. And so I came back and worked in the Senate later and had 12 great years there. And then a long time, I went off and did other things. And a long time afterward, I looped back, worried about the decline of the Senate. And I wrote my first book 10 years ago. And I've written a couple since. And I've kind of watched the decline. And I'm afraid my books haven't stopped the decline. But this last one was prompted when I got angry, really angry during 2020, when we had an unhinged president during a pandemic. And it was also clear that he was going to refuse to accept the results of an election that he lost. And from my standpoint, the responsibility of the Senate, the senators and the Senate, was to check this kind of president.
Yep.
That's what they're there for. That's their basic raison d'etre. And they failed the country. And so I got angrier and angrier, and I wrote this third book.
And we appreciate that. And you, just for context for the folks out there, you are from what I understood, an ambassador and trade negotiator with, I believe it was it Canada? I believe that you were the trade negotiator with, or Japan, perhaps. Maybe I'm remembering wrong.
No, it was both, actually.
Oh, well.
And the ambassador thing, people ask me about that. My son once said, my dad was an ambassador, but they didn't give him a country. And that's true. I had an ambassadorial rank because of the negotiations that I was doing. And Bill Clinton nominated me, and the Senate confirmed me unanimously. So I was an ambassador. And I did a lot in international trade. But when Trump became president, I decided everyone was excited about his trade, what he would do in trade. And I was more worried about what he would do to the democracy.
Yeah.
So I shifted out of trade and started writing the second and third books.
So, question for you, because you're a history file and you seem to be well learned about the happenings in this country. Something that you said earlier kind of just sparked the question for me is how like world jarring is it to actually consider a president not accepting the results of it? Like how impossible in your brain was that before it happened?
I think it's good question. I mean, I think originally I would have thought it was impossible.
Right.
It was not something that has ever happened. It was not something I ever thought would happen. People used to sometimes talk about Watergate and Nixon. Nixon would have never done that.
No.
And Nixon was pretty bad. So I didn't think that would happen until I saw how Trump was proceeding. But that's the key. If it's going to go that way, there ought to be somebody who steps in, who has some stature and responsibility and does something about it. That was supposed to be the Senate. And that's where they betrayed the country.
Just a curious question and your thoughts on the Senate. So I've always thought of the Senate as, and I know a lot of people say this isn't just me, but the Senate is basically constructed in a way that it almost does nothing, right? It holds things up. So in a way, is McConnell, and I'm not saying this is a defense to the Grand Turtle, but in a way, is he doing his job? Because it seems that that's exactly what the House was set up for.
Well, I think that the Senate was set up to be, they used to talk about as the saucer that cooled the water, whatever, the hot water. It's supposed to be a moderating force.
Right.
It's supposed to give more thought to things and cool the passions of the day. But it's not supposed to be paralyzing the government. There's a difference between moderating things and trying to work things out and bring people together. That's different than paralysis. The first book I wrote, which is called The Last Great Senate, it may have been actually the only great Senate, the Senate of the 60s and the 70s. They accomplished a lot. They weren't paralyzed. They stepped up to the problems of the country month after month. And they did it even when the president, who was Jimmy Carter in the late 70s.
Just a humble bean farmer.
He did it when the president had his problems. He wasn't that strong at that point. He had an ambitious agenda, but he had difficulty accomplishing it. And yet the Senate did one thing, worked with him and did one thing after another, domestic policy and foreign policy. So I don't accept the view that the Senate's supposed to paralyze things. And I argue through the book, which is more of a story. It's not political science. It's a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
You get the feeling that what McConnell is doing is different than any other Senate leader. Most Senate leaders tried in their own way to bring people together and to make the Senate work. And he's quite the opposite.
Yeah, because training wheels is one thing, but railroading is something completely different. Where he's at this point, and I'm surprised we can't get him out of that seat. But I can't believe Kentucky literally thinks, you know what? Let's just do nothing until Mitch McConnell I guess I don't know what the life expectancy of like a land turtle is, but it's quite long. He's been in his chair for quite some time, and he plans on making sure that no one who has a trans kid or a gay friend or has different views on anything, he's convinced that nothing should and will get done. Because I don't remember anything that he's tried to push through that was good for anybody.
Except when there's a Supreme Court seat open, of course, then he starts pushing. Then he works at light speed.
Well, that's
Tortoise
right.
in the hair.
I mean, I think sorry. I shouldn't start my interviews this late at night.
Mm-mm. I blame Mitch McConnell and his time zones.
I think that Kentucky has elected him like 7 times.
Yeah.
I think they enjoy having a senator who's one of the leaders. I don't think he's done anything much for the interests of Kentucky or their people. But I do think that he has been very effective at his goals. Cutting taxes for rich people,
which
deregulating the government.
And Kentucky is not rich.
And I didn't say Kentucky is rich. The rich people who are the donors of the Republican Party.
Right.
You hear
He's
that, Kentucky?
been good at that, and his overall goal of capturing the Supreme Court for the right. And he's been successful at that.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you a question about Chuck Schumer.
Yes.
It seems to me that he enables McConnell more than he opposes him, historically speaking. I mean, he'll be loud. He'll loudly oppose him, on things like, with the filibuster in the 90s, I think it was. And then, maybe they'll come together on the debt ceiling or something of that nature, like they did 6 to 8 months ago, whatever the case may be. But like, is Chuck Schumer is in charge of the Senate right now, but you wouldn't know it. Am I wrong that it seems that there's this ratchet effect in place and he's just enabling Schumer along while yelling that he doesn't like him along the way?
Well, I think you run into the structure of the Senate, right? With this super majority requirement. So although Schumer's the majority leader, he doesn't really have enough votes to accomplish what he would like to do in a 50-50 Senate. And that's the whole problem that Biden has encountered. He came in with a very ambitious agenda and collides with the political reality of the Senate. But I think the situation is more, if it had to be more serious, it's even more serious. I would argue, and we have a reminder of it with the tragedy and the horrific events of yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I've said to people, if you make a list, if you're Democrats or even independents, if you make a list of the 5 things that upset you most about the country, you'll find one person at the intersection of all of them, and that's McConnell. And sometimes people forget, Trump looms so large, sometimes people forget that there were things before Trump.
Right.
Our politics and our government were broken and dysfunctional before Trump came down the escalator. And I read one of my other interviews, they said to me, you seem to blame McConnell for everything. Can one person have done that much damage?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yes.
In 42 years. Yeah.
Well, 42 years, but let's focus on, I would say, here's think about a long, gradual decline of the Senate, say for 15 years, starting in 1990 or so, maybe a little more. And then it takes a deep downward dive, accelerating downward. That's when McConnell came on the scene. That's when the leaders ceased to try to work anything out.
Yeah.
So, I blame him for a lot of things. In my list, I was going over it, the only thing I don't blame him for at this moment actually is inflation. I don't think he caused that.
No, that's not how inflation works.
No,
that's the only thing, though.
they say, well, but he is responsible for wages not keeping up with inflation. He's got a hand in that. I mean, obviously, just by not allowing any regulation.
No regulation, and certainly weakening unions to the extent he can. But I started by mentioning the horrific events of yesterday in Texas. We've had a gun problem for as long as I can remember. I mean, my heroes were gunned down in 1968. So that was a long time ago. But after Sandy Hook in 2012, Joe Manchin and Pat Toomey, no great liberals, came up with a reasonable gun bill for universal background checks. And McConnell and the other Senate Republicans killed it. Even after 25 and 6-year-olds were killed in a school. And the conservative guys came forward with some kind of a solution or some kind of a partial solution. McConnell couldn't support that. He killed it. So I hold him accountable for a lot of things.
So I want to ask you two questions, one of which will probably be very brief. The other one maybe not so much. The longer one. If I were a conservative, and I am a former conservative, so I'm going to dig into my old conservative Jason, and try to say, well, they would hold him up as a defender of the Constitution. They would hold him up as a protector of individual liberties. I don't think that any of them actually believe that he liked Trump. I don't think that he did like Trump per se. I think that he tolerated Trump, but he saw Trump as a means to an end. But they would point to all of the positive things about America. And there is a lot of positive things about America. We're not saying that there's not some, and say, look at all of this that's taken place under him, right? We've got the GDP is at an all-time high. You've got a conservative Supreme Court that's defending the Constitution because they believe they're originalists, and so on and so forth, especially now with pro-life, looking like it might have scored a victory based on his work. How would you combat that how would you combat that conservative notion that, because to a conservative, he's good, right? Like they keep voting him in. It's just to normal people, we realize he's a fraud. So, I mean, help me with that, because I struggle with that conversation quite a bit.
Well, look, to some extent, obviously, to some extent, I'm a Democrat, and so I don't agree with that view of the world. So we have a genuine difference, he and I, or Democrats and Republicans. But
right.
I think that if you go beyond policy differences and you sort of start, I criticize him also for trashing the norms that make the system work, basically. Yeah. Doing things that nobody else has ever done. Like blocking the nomination of Garland and not considering it in 2016, something that had never been done. Coming back 4 years later and ramming through a confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett 8 days before the election.
Right.
Trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act without hearings, without markups, without consultation, without anything. I think, and when Obama became president, when we were in the Great Recession and teetering on the verge of a depression, opposing and trying to oppose any economic stimulus that would have helped the country.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think the record, so there's the record, the policies I don't agree with, and there's also the trashing of norms. and behaving like no one else who's ever been a Senate leader.
So with the way I'm processing recent events, our Constitution needs an overhaul. So the subsection that deals with the Senate, what would you change in there if we're giving you full power to rewrite the Constitution, the Senate chapter? What would you change about what's in there now, and what does it need?
Well, I think our Constitution does need an overhaul, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to get one.
Right.
And the one provision that certainly, as we look at it, would not be regarded as ideal was 2 senators per state.
Yeah.
Where one state has 600,000 people, Wyoming, and one state has 40 million plus. It defends our notion of democracy, but that's kind of baked into the Constitution. You might be able to make things better by having maybe 15 more senators who were elected at large for the country. So all the states would still have 2 each, but that would be a different kind of Senate. Maybe or DC could have its 2 senators.
Puerto Rico
could have its 2 senators. But look, one of the things I try to do, and maybe this is futile, I actually accept the institution, and because I don't regard major changes as likely. And I try to encourage the senators to act like senators, to not be they're not supposed to be partisan hacks. They're not supposed to be state legislators. They have the most privileged jobs you can have. And in return, they're supposed to exercise some responsibility and look at the national interest. And I don't expect Republicans to agree with me, but I do expect that they would be their best selves and not do things they know are absolutely wrong.
Right.
What they've done.
What would like, trying to think, was it Mansfield was the majority leader for the majority of the 60s during the Civil Rights Acts and stuff like that, I believe. And I'm trying to think of a couple of, so you had Trent Lott, you had Bob Dole. Those guys were Republicans. They were majority leaders. What was different about them than what we see with McConnell today? Like put some fruit in the basket.
Yeah, it's a great question. Night and day difference. And Mansfield's a good example because, obviously, a lot of the listeners may not know who Mansfield was. So I'll just say he was the majority leader for 16 years when the Senate was at its best. My first book was called The Last Great Senate, but in the second book, I referred to it as Mansfield's Senate. Mansfield set the tone for the Senate. He recreated a Senate that was based on bipartisanship, mutual trust, and respect. He wasn't a bully as a leader, but everyone respected him, and we sort of worked in kind of a healthy system at the time. Mansfield loved John Kennedy. They were close friends. He didn't trust Lyndon Johnson, and he hated Richard Nixon. But he gave all 3 of them the same kind of advice because that's what a leader would do with the president. Mansfield was revered by Republicans and Democrats. And the reason I can prove that Mansfield was the best leader is because Mitch McConnell has said Mansfield is the leader that he admires the most. But McConnell's the anti-Mansfield. He's absolutely the opposite of Mansfield. He's nothing like Mansfield or Howard Baker or Robert Byrd, who I regard as the 3 great leaders of the Senate. And the difference is Senate leaders felt an obligation to bring people together. And we got a contentious, diverse country. Legislating's really hard under the best of circumstances, but it becomes impossible if you're not operating in good faith. And McConnell doesn't operate in good faith.
I figured it out, by the way. All of the like judicial districts, each one of those districts, we can give them 2. And then that way it's fair.
Yeah.
They cover a couple of states.
What, do you think
The other
that,
question. Oh, go ahead, Haas.
You're a little quiet, Haas.
I'm digesting what my man is saying here, but I have a question. My question is, because I haven't been involved in politics in an active way long enough to know, was McConnell always this way, or was this something that came on as he started to see how the sausage was made in his goals of having power and things like that?
Well, that's a question. That's a great question, and a lot of people ask that. I would say that McConnell. Most people would think that McConnell has changed. He was basically a moderate garden variety conservative who was sort of proud of his civil rights record originally. And over time, as he rose, he changed and became more focused on simply acquiring and maintaining power, and has done it, obviously, with great success. People say to me, how can he be so successful? Why don't the other Republicans, some of them, break with him? And the answer is that he's very good at what he does. He understands the donor base of the Republican Party extremely well. He raises money from them. He distributes money. He basically then gives back to the donors with legislative or regulatory policies. He does what he does really well. And he takes advantage of what we were talking before, which is the Senate, the way the Senate works, where you can obstruct a Democratic president pretty effectively. It's a lot easier. I've done legislation, and most people who do it recognize it's not easy. Obstruction's a lot easier. It's not a fair game in that sense.
Yeah, it's easier to trip someone than pull someone up.
Yeah.
Do you think that and that was a really good question, Haas. I didn't even think of that, so kudos to that question. My question was going to be, do you feel, Ira, that Gingrich influenced McConnell more or vice versa?
I feel that the two people who have had the most influence on our politics prior to Donald Trump were Gingrich and McConnell. I agree with that. I think Gingrich, his supporters and his opponents would agree Gingrich had a large effect on our politics. Politics as war, nothing, no holds barred, politics of personal destruction.
Win at all costs.
Yeah. I think McConnell came up a different way, but he's at the same point of win at all costs at this point.
So do you think,
interesting,
what do you think the influence of like Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller have had on the Republican Party for sure, but the Senate? Because their toxicity was Trump was literally just parroting out their tweets and everything that they had to say. Do you think that they had any influence on McConnell in the Senate?
I think they've had a great deal of influence on the overall Republican Party, and that would be the Republican base and the Republican members of Congress and the Senate. I mean, look, I was going to say the biggest story, but let's say perhaps one of the biggest stories of our American politics is the long move of the Republican Party from conservatism to radicalism, to nihilism. It's gone on for a long time. And McConnell, part of his genius is he surfs the wave of this madness and survives, right? I mean, the House leaders that you may talk about in the second hour, the young guns, a bunch of these people show up. They're bright stars, and they end up on the side of the road within a couple of years, one after the other. But McConnell has managed to surf the madness. Yeah. So he's quite skillful, and there are reasons for that, for reasons that he has succeeded. But I think Bannon and Trump have had a profound effect overall in forming the basis and creating this sort of white nationalism party.
Yeah, the MAGA.
Yeah, something that resembles the moves toward authoritarianism and white nationalism in so many other countries in the world now.
Yeah. What would you say to someone? And I want to ask you a specific question about the book, but what would you say to someone who is a denier of the Southern strategy or the party switch in general?
Sorry, ask that again.
What would you say to someone who is a denier of the party switch, the conservatism moving from Dixiecrats over to the more of that Dixiecrat mentality being found now in the Republican Party? Because Republicans at large will tell you that the Southern strategy never happened, that it was a myth, because people switched parties at the wrong time and this and that didn't make sense, and that because Jimmy Carter was elected from Georgia, et cetera, et cetera. What would you say to those folks when it comes to this mentality switch?
No. Look, I guess I would say that it's pretty empirically obvious that the parties, both parties, have changed over time. When I wrote about the last great Senate, or in the 60s and 70s Senate, there were liberal and moderate Republicans from the Northeast and the Midwest. Yep. There were conservative Democrats from the South. Then there were moderate Democrats from the South. We've seen the parties polarize on regional lines, on racial lines, and on ideological lines. It's hard to deny that there hasn't been a change. When Gingrich became Speaker and then Trent Lott became Senate leader, Lott noted proudly it was the first time that the two leaders of Congress had come from the South at the same time. And that was 1995 or so. So
I was watching Lion King.
Yeah, it's hard to deny that there was a change.
Yeah, 94. But he came in, Newt Gingrich at least.
Right. And Lott came a little later because Bob Dole stayed in the Senate as leader, and then he resigned in 96 to run for president.
Yeah, that's right. This is fascinating stuff, man. I literally could sit here and ask you questions all day, but I won't. So about your book.
Yeah.
We'll get to it in a minute as far as how people can find it. And again, the link to the Amazon, to buy it on Amazon is in the show notes. But if there was one free snippet from your book, one idea,
a teaser
that you want to make sure that people know about, what would that teaser trailer where you kind of hinting that Spider-Man might be in this movie, but you don't really want to say for sure, so people go see it. What would that be? What would that concept be?
I guess the concept would be, it goes back to this question of the responsibility of these people who have these privileged positions. On the first page of my book, there are 3 quotes, and the first quote came from Jeff Flake, who was this Republican senator from Arizona. Mm-hmm. And Flake says, there are only a few people that can do something about an executive branch in chaos. And when we look around and we say somebody should do something without realizing the somebody is us, they had the responsibility. That's why the betrayal theme. They had the responsibility. And what my book shows in 2020, every time as the situation in our country, remember, we had a once in a century pandemic. We had a racial reckoning after the murder of George Floyd. We had a president spewing misinformation and getting ready about the pandemic and getting ready to essentially try to stay in office. And it was quite clear what he was trying to do. And yet they did nothing about it. And when Joe Biden won the election, McConnell and the others, many of the others, did not acknowledge his victory for 5 weeks. 5 weeks. And it was in that time that the big lie spread. You know, if McConnell and the others had said, well, tough election, we'll be back in 4 years, but Joe Biden won, we wouldn't have had 50 million people who thought, 50 million being 70% of the Trump voters,
right,
who thought the election was stolen. And we probably wouldn't have had an insurrection either.
And they still, I mean, that is still a running theme. It's still a running theme now. You'll see that in
yeah. Well, but now
posts all over the place that this election was stolen and Biden. I don't recognize Biden as a president. He's not our legitimate president. President Trump is still the president.
But they were only stolen at the top of the ticket. Nothing at the bottom of the ticket was stolen.
Right. But the thing is, and maybe it's just what I expect people to do, but if these people who knew better, the Republican senators, if they had contradicted Trump's big lie, if they had said, no, the election's over, I think that would have mattered. Look, I think a lot of the people who came to march on the Capitol and even some of the insurrectionists, they thought they were doing something patriotic because their president asked them to do it, and nobody was denying, nobody was pushing back.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In my estimation, any pushback that was there was very tepid, and it was almost like, oh, we really shouldn't do that, but we don't want to piss y'all off, so we're not going to really push back.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that there comes a time where you have to be emphatic about something in order to prevent a greater harm from happening. And I think that, conservatives and Republicans in power did that. And I think also the Democratic Party failed us in that too, because I think that they weren't strong enough in their
definitely not
emphasis on what the truth was. And I mean,
I guess I don't exactly agree with that. I think that things were so partisan. The Democrats were strong on this, but things were so partisan that the only way Trump his lie could have been defused was if some Republicans spoke up.
Immediately spoke up. I agree with you there. I agree with you there.
But the ones that did got chastised and basically rhinoed out of the party. Like it's. Well, I don't really see where there was a win there for. I understand why they did it because they don't care.
It's about the win. I think it's about what's right.
They don't care about us. They care about their power and their donors. That's what it comes down to.
I mean, that turns out to be the problem. But my argument is, they owed us more. They owed us more. These people, that's the best job you can have, right? Multiple 6-year terms for most of them. McConnell, Grassley, they'll serve 5 times as long as any president can ever serve.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got no executive responsibility. So they can roam across all the issues. They can pick the things they want to do. That's the reason. They're a good gig. That's the reason. Nobody ever questioned when Bobby Kennedy, after his brother was killed, Bobby Kennedy ran for the Senate. Everyone knew it was a great place to go. Hillary Clinton ran for the Senate after she'd been first lady. It has the potential to be it's not only a great job, but it has the potential to be something that really serves the country. And so if you can't do that, and instead you're abandoning your responsibility in a time of crisis, I think you're betraying your oath of office.
I agree. My question is, what on a scale, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think, how would you rank the effect of corporate money in politics on a decline of politicians in the Senate and in Congress in general,
as far as the correlation between money and the decline?
Money in politics and actually representing your constituency instead of those people that are feeding your coffers?
I think the effect of corporate money has been very significant. Dick Durbin, I remember from Illinois, in the Obama years, he was trying to do financial regulation so there wouldn't be another subprime mortgage crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And Durbin said the banks own this place. Banks were, had so many lobbyists up there.
Right.
Certainly, the Republican policies reflect the great and not great, the powerful influence, particularly the fossil fuel industry.
Yep. Guns, tech.
And guns.
Yeah, guns, tech, banking.
Yeah. No, I mean,
those are really the 3 big ones.
Right. And so
and the insurance companies.
Yeah. So I think it is a very important thing. But I think what's important from my standpoint is that the senators are supposed to, well, let me step back. If you look around the world, in every developed country, there's a certain rising level of inequality. There's something no doubt, there's something in globalization and technology that has led to some inequality rising. But the responsibility of the government ought to be to lean against that, right? And if you compare our level of inequality with other countries who are developed, it's much higher. And that's because of Republican power. That's because of big money. And that's because of this degree of deregulation that we've had. Now, McConnell, we were talking about, I think Jason asked the question originally, isn't he, he would say he's defending America. That's, he's a real American and conservative. I sort of understand the argument, but the notion, we're a complex society and you need some degree of regulation. And you also need government because capitalism left on its own always gets accepted, produces more inequality. So you got to, that's why over history, right? Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, these periods of time when there had to be government action to rein things in. And I guess that's why I'm a Democrat. But I think that makes more sense than just letting people run amok. And, I'm guilty of having gone to Brandeis University, named for Justice Louis Brandeis. Brandeis was a great mind, and Brandeis once said, you can have great concentration of wealth or you can have democracy, but you can't have both.
I'm going to give you a gift. Your gift is this. I am going to transport your consciousness into Chuck Schumer for 30 days. What do you do?
I'm not a real critic of Chuck Schumer. I think he and Biden have made some mistakes. I think, frankly, they thought eventually, if they gave Manchin certain things, Manchin would come along. I think that's kind of the reasonable thing in politics, right? You put your mark on the bill, you get some things out of it that you wanted, and then you vote for the bill. Turns out Manchin wasn't doing that. He just kept making one demand after another. So I'm not really a critic of Schumer. But somebody said to me recently that my book, they really liked my book. They thought it was a great read, but it was pretty depressing. Well, depressing times. But it's a call to action also. You want to change the country? Elect more Democratic senators. Defeat Republican senators. Diminish McConnell's power. We've been living in McConnell's America too long. And that's a practical call for action. And we've got strong Democratic Senate candidates this year. And the playing field tilts to the Democrats because the Republicans have more seats at risk.
Yeah. And
I like that. I like that you say we've been living in McConnell's America for too long. And I think that we all of us have made this assertion at some point or another, in some form or another, that our state and local elections and our senatorial elections are oftentimes more important than the presidential election, because that's where the real power lies.
Yeah.
And I think that you just crystallized that in one statement.
Well, thanks. I don't take any pleasure in the notion that we've been living in McConnell's America. But if you look at our income inequality, our endless debates over health care, our failure to have any gun control measures. He was also the leading opponent of Obama's efforts on climate change.
Yep.
You just go down the list and you find one person at the intersection of all of it.
Yeah. You're not wrong. By the way, though, little silver lining. Congratulations to our friend of the show, Natalie James in Arkansas, who won the Democratic primary. We had her on about was it February, March, or January or February? So congratulations, Natalie. Take out John Boozman.
And we'll be waiting on our edible arrangement too.
Yes, we'll be.
We pushed you over the top.
Yes, it all started here. We launched her campaign. We are responsible. So we need people like Natalie James, like Alan Ellison, like many of the other candidates we've had on this show. We've had 30 candidates on this show so far this year.
That's great.
And Ira, I just want to thank you for staying on for the first hour. Tell the people how they can find your book, where they can pick it up at, and any special 1% off discounts that they can get from from saying a special keyword or something. I don't know.
Yeah, if they want to call me, I'll give them 1% off. Well, the book is in many bookstores. The book is also available at Barnes and Noble and Amazon links. independent bookstore as well, indie. I encourage people to look at my website, which is www.irashapiroauthor.com. It has a lot of information about the book as well as these links. But I think the real thing is that, like any author, love people to get the book and buy it and read it. But it's also written because the upcoming elections are so important.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend the time as much as I can between now and November talking about the issues, talking about the book and the concerns, because I do think these elections are very important. And although everyone's dramatic about it, I think our democracy is hanging by a thread.
I don't think you're wrong. Real quick, one word question. Take that back. I want to know a little bit about why, briefly. Who's the best member of the Senate right now, in your opinion?
Oh, that's a great question.
Your MVP for 2022.
There are a lot of them, actually, that are pretty good. I'm really impressed with Chris Murphy at the moment from Connecticut.
Where?
He's been passionately involved in gun control since Sandy Hook, but he's also been he was very early forceful on what needed to be done on the coronavirus, and he's very strong in foreign policy too. But there's a lot of good senators there. One of my frustrations, frankly, is that a lot of them have the capability to do the job, even a number of the Republicans, but they've locked themselves into an institution that doesn't work. And I have said repeatedly, senators, take back the Senate. Take it back from the leaders. Be real senators, show their independence, make the committees work. And frankly, they failed. And I like the fact, unlike the Senate I wrote about for many, in the early going, that Senate had like 99 or 100 white guys in it. I like the fact that there are some minorities in the Senate now and 25 women. But you got to recognize that it's working worse, so even though the mix is better, the outcomes are worse. So what happened? The answer is McConnell happened.
Yeah. We negotiate with him and he doesn't negotiate back. That's his philosophy.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a fair way to put it. And interestingly, one question I get a lot was, because Biden was in the Senate for so long, and didn't he think he could make the Senate work, and wasn't he naive?
Huh.
And I think the answer is no. He knows enough to know. He had no illusions about McConnell. He might have thought he could get some of the moderate Republicans to do more with him, and he wanted to work that way, but no real illusions about McConnell. McConnell likes Biden personally much better than he liked Obama. No question about it.
You don't say.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. They're both Democratic presidents who have to be obstructed and defeated.
Yeah. I think it's hilarious that he calls him a radical leftist. That's one of the most comical things ever. Even Obama was super centrist. So I mean, it's like, anyway. All right, so there we go. Go and pick up Ira's book. I know I am going to. Is it on audiobook?
No, not yet. I hope there'll be an audiobook in the next couple of months, but there isn't any. It's on. It's on Kindle. You can get an ebook.
Okay.
Smooth.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shapiro. I loved it. I learned a lot. I'm sorry I was quiet, but I was listening and trying to just soak in all of the knowledge you were putting out there. So,
absolutely.
Well, I love what I love being here, but I also love what you're doing. I mean, when I see the kind of history you're getting into, it's great. And,
well, you
these
said
conversations where you actually get to, it's not a 15-second or 2-minute soundbite, to really just get to talk is wonderful.
Yeah, you mentioned before, someone said about your book that they loved your book, but man, it makes you upset. Bill in the chat has said this, and many other people are too. We like your podcast, but I'm tired of being bummed out all the time. You know what I mean? It's like, and we feel that way too. Like it drains us, and it's we want to be able to talk about the next Marvel movie, but we can't, because democracy is in danger. And when we say that to one crowd of people, they get upset, and the other crowd thinks we're insane. So it's like, oh, well, what are you talking about? Democracy is in danger. There's no threat, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, and so you've got this tale of two cities. So with that being said, we're going to push the boat forward. Ira, we'd love you to stay on.
Appreciate you.
Do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we're going to spend about, I don't want to talk about this very long, and then we're going to stop the show. And we'll move into the history topic. I don't want to talk about fucking Texas too much, but we have to at least address the elephant in the room. Yesterday, I think the count right now is 22 people were killed in Texas by a lone gunman, whose name shall not be spoken because he can go fuck himself.
Not on our airwaves.
Largely Hispanic town just outside of San Antonio. Most of the victims,
children.
Most of the victims were little kids, my kids' age. And this is a week after Buffalo.
Yep.
Which is a week after the last one, which is a week after the last one.
Or maybe a few days after the last one,
There have been more mass shootings of 4 or more people. Now, some of these are domestic, but they're still mass shootings. There have been more mass shootings in 2022 than there have been days on the calendar. You had 5 on New Year's Day by itself. And you're going to go and you're going to sit there and you're going to tell me that you give a flying shit about right to life and march for their not march for our lives, the march for whatever the hell the pro. And look, this is not an anti pro-life statement, but if you're going to say you're pro-life, for God's sake, be pro-life across the board, you monster, because it's disgusting. And not to say that this would have been preventable, but it could have been with some mitigation.
I want to say,
this kid bought this fucking gun like 5-6 days ago.
Yeah, of course. It's Texas. You do what you want.
How about a mental health check?
No. Why?
And again, all of us are gun owners. I don't know about Ira, but like, I can't
and
anymore
here's the thing
with these fucking people.
Here's the thing is that the same people that defend this ability to just
but I'm triggered. I'm sorry. I'm so
go
triggered.
grab a gun.
I'm making it political.
People that trigger and say this is two-way. You go get your gun whenever. Those are the same people that say, well, if we could save one life by closing the borders. But they want to apply that same logic. They want to apply that same logic.
They parade. Thank you for saying that. They parade, and God bless any of these angel moms, these whose kids were killed by illegal immigrants, right? I'm not defaming your child for being killed. But on one hand, you're parading these angel moms on an angel mom, for those who don't know, is what they call an American mother whose child was killed by an illegal immigrant. They parade them around. But
Right.
God forbid the Parkland kids, they're just political opportunists. Fucking hypocrisy is disgusting. Ira, do you have any quick thoughts on this?
No, I mean, I think America, we're an outlier in the world. There is no country in the world that has the guns that we have, the number of guns, the types of weapons that we have, the types of mass killings that we have. I mean, it's almost inconceivable how shameful it is. And it's I mean, look, I'm older than you guys. I had the luxury of growing up without being worried about guns in schools, and I had the luxury of having children who didn't have to worry about it. Now I have grandchildren, and they do have to worry about it. It's madness that it goes on like this. And yet we will see, but there's a great tendency to say, I mean, this is crazy, but nothing can be done. It comes back to defeating the people who are who are NRA captives.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
This week, as you know, this weekend, the NRA, by coincidence, is having their annual meeting
In Houston. Yep.
You go figure.
And Donald Trump will be there.
Yep.
Greg Abbott will be there.
Yep.
Yep.
And Ted Cruz will be there.
Yep.
And they'll probably say, we've got to stop those people who are going to restrict our Second Amendment rights.
Yeah.
You know what they've said so far? So far, they've said, man, if only the teacher had a gun.
Yeah. Because the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy with a gun.
The first person to get shot,
no matter how trained they are.
The first person to get shot was a law enforcement officer.
Right.
So right before I got on the show with you, I happened to see Lawrence O'Donnell for a few minutes on MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
He showed a clip with former Chief Justice, he was then former, Warren Burger, back in 1991. Burger had been off the court for 5 years. And he said, as far as I'm concerned, the Second Amendment shouldn't be part of the Constitution. It's an absolute fraud. The notion that the Second Amendment had anything to do with allowing individuals to have guns. It was about militias during the Revolutionary War. It wasn't, and yet the Supreme Court in 2008 found for the first time that the Second Amendment protected the right of people to own guns.
And Heller, yeah.
Yeah, Heller. But you remember, Heller said, Scalia said, but the states and localities have the right to regulate reasonably.
Right.
Well, the NRA doesn't believe that. And so therefore the Republicans don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And indeed, Kavanaugh, as bad as he was on abortion, is worse on guns.
Yep.
So we have no choice but to try to defeat the Republicans in their current form. Maybe someday there'll be a Republican or conservative party that isn't radical and dangerous, but right now it is.
So you guys remember the shooting in Buffalo? 10 people were killed, 3 people injured. There's been 16 mass shootings since then.
Yeah.
That was just over a week ago.
That was 11 days ago.
Yeah.
Well, and the worst of it is, and I feel this way, and I'm sure you do, I'm never surprised when there's a mass shooting.
Nope.
There's so many weapons and so many disturbed people, and other people who are not disturbed in that way, but are committed to a certain ideology that they want to further. So there's different classes. I'm never surprised. So a lot of things have to change.
Yeah. I'm every day I always have like a small, maybe 2-3 sentence conversation with the wife of just trying to convince her to let's live somewhere else. I'm like, in Canada, everyone gets a free moose and they give it to you as a baby. And most of them are lies, but like I'm not.
They're white lies.
White lies matter. It's
That's for sure.
It's I don't mean to be like the, well, I'm going to take my ball and go home kind of guy, but I got to survive the battle. Like I'm 34. So the prospect of putting a kid in high school, because like I think I was 12. I was 11 or 12 when Columbine happened. And then like that next September, I had to go to high school for the first time. And it was a nightmare. And like all these drills and all this active shooter stuff that you have to do for high school and colleges and jobs and all that stuff. Like, is that really our defense? That's our answer to all of this is, well, what you're going to do is you're going to barricade the door and then get behind. It's like, so that's our plan.
Let's get these bulletproof backpacks.
Bulletproof backpacks. That's our plan. That's the best we've come up with since I was going in as a freshman.
Of course, you can always backpacks. Just arm the teachers to the teeth.
Yeah, because I remember how I was in high school. Do not give the fucking gym teacher a shotgun. No, because we were not doing those fucking laps, and we had a mouth on us.
And then what exactly what you would see is you would see shootings by teachers.
Yep. Or how the
or students who take the gun from the teacher's desk.
Exactly. So you put more guns in the school, but the guns that they're getting already are supposed to be locked up at home. Yeah. And now I'm supposed to trust this teacher to supposed to lock them up at work.
Yeah, and not have a bad day.
Not be off, not be tired, not do nothing. like
right.
That's such a crazy dice roll.
And another of the grand ironies, on the one side, two-way supporters are like, well, these regulations and things don't work because you could be mentally stable one day and be perfectly fine to have a gun, and then something happens or bad people are going to get guns. But then no teachers have a bad day. No teachers snap out. No teachers, get in altercations with students. Mm-hmm. And now there's a gun involved. And instead of it being a wrestling match, now it's a shooting.
How many times do you hear about a teacher who commits sexual misconduct with a kid? So you're going to sit there and tell me that teachers are virtuous up and down the
exactly. And that the teachers aren't going to carry their biases into the classroom like they are. Like it's,
I thought I saw a gun. I thought I saw a gun. Yeah. Like that's not their job. He was
reaching in his bag. He had a black Texas Instruments big ass calculator and not a gun.
Yeah,
right. That's there. We don't need more Yosemite Sam fucking gun toting weirdos fucking running around here with bad attitude. Like the cops are bad enough.
They already disproportionately treat minority kids worse.
Right.
Harsher punishment for the same crime. You're going to tell me that the hall monitor who has a gun isn't going to, maybe not on purpose, but inadvertently shoot Tyrone because
he runs away from him.
Yeah.
And didn't what's it called? Didn't the guy at Sandy Hook, didn't he just like run to his car and just not go in?
No, Parkland.
That was the Parkland coward. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just ran out of the bed. So giving the fucking teachers guns does what for me?
Yeah.
That's not a guarantee that they're not going to just dip anyway.
And we're not saying take everyone's gun.
I am.
In this conversation,
take them all, start over. Everybody loses their gun. You got to earn them back. Fuck it. I'm pulling this country over.
Maybe you can get to the point where that'd be a conversation to have. But because I would rather not own one.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I'll give mine up if that's what it costs.
I'm not a gun culture guy. I don't get a hard on from firing a gun.
Me either.
didn't
But
say
I'm
all-
not giving mine up.
I ain't say all of them, Haas. Chill.
But but can we start with just a common sense, behavioral analysis by a qualified professional?
Well, it sounds like you're trying to make jobs.
Or a test that, it sounds like I'm trying to help the economy, or a test to, make sure you're proficient to at least some degree. Like
sounds like you're trying to make jobs again.
Yeah. God forbid that, we hire people to do work, to do regulatory work.
So Haas, you're into the gun culture a lot more than I am. Do they have state sponsored like shooting events where they have someone from the state come out and say, okay, this is how you do, like, do they have that like at a range or something like that? Do they host events or anything like that?
Well, there's competitions and things like that, but there's not like state sponsored necessarily.
They're private.
We gotta get Julie on.
Okay.
She knows. She goes out to Waterman a lot and does competitions, 3-gun competitions. I think it's revolver, semi-auto, and rifle.
But this isn't about that. This isn't about.
I know, but I'm just saying.
He's just finishing his sentence.
I'm just saying, like, you want to go grab an AR-15 or an M16 and go to the range and blow up watermelons. I'm sure that's a blast, right? Like clay shooting, I'm sure is fun. But you don't need 16 AR-15s in your garage with 4,500.
Slightly different though.
You're right. One of them, they all have the peacemaker symbol.
The dove of peace.
The dove of peace on them.
But this one has the Punisher symbol. That's the one I use when I'm angry. And
guys, it's time for me to check out.
All right.
No,
hey, I understand.
Good segue because we have to end this show anyway. So thank you.
Really appreciated it.
And we appreciate you, man.
Great conversation.
And I hope that your book does well, and hope that
well so far. And
you're up one copy. We sent one out to one of our listeners.
That's the spirit.
There we go.
That's the spirit. Somebody said to me, "Are your friends buying your book?" I said, "They are, but nobody's got enough friends. You got to sell it to people who you don't know too."
That's right.
That's how we feel about subscribers.
All right. Take care, guys.
Have a great one.
Thanks.
Maybe we'll come back later in the year together.
We'd love it.
We'll do a check-in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Here we